All right. Thank you for joining us here on the United Goalkeeping, the Goalkeepers podcast. And today we have, like you guys know, this week has been is going to be a different week. So today I have three very special people in my life. Two of my former players and my one of my daughters here today. And what we're going to just talk about is mental health and what it is that it means to to someone who's a young adult, right? And with that, we're also going to talk a little bit about pressure and having resources and people around us that can help when we have those difficult situations. And to me, obviously, it's a very difficult topic in the sense that um, these are three very special people that I have in my life that um, I would hope that if they ever ran into something, they could have the confidence to come to me for guidance or help, right? Um, so again, letting people know that they're important is something that we have to kind of do every single day, making sure that they know that they're important to us, and not only letting them know, but obviously keeping communication and stuff like that. So, who wants to go first? Who wants to introduce themselves first? On the call, we have Diego, Lauren, and Renee. So, Lauren, why don't you go first?
Hi, my name is Lauren Walker. I am 20 years old. Coach Art was one of my coaches when I was younger for, I think, a couple years, maybe 3 years, something like that.
3, 4 years. Yeah.
And our families have been really close since I was really little. So we've known them for a really, really long time, along with Renee. I now play at college. I'm a sophomore at King's College in Wilkes-Barre, PA, where I'm on their soccer team. We just got to have our first actual season because of COVID last year. We didn't get to have one, so we had our first season. I'm a pre-physician assistant major at college, so it's like pre-med sort of, but in a special track for PA school. Um, and yeah.
Renee, go ahead.
My name is Renee Hernandez. I'm actually Art's daughter. 21 years old. I did play at Montgomery County Community College for a couple years. This year was my last year. Again, because of the pandemic, I couldn't play in 2020, the fall of 2020. So this was my last season. I'm a goalkeeper, and yeah.
And last but not least, Diego, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, my name's Diego. I'm 16. I play for Penn Fusion, ECRL, and for Conestoga High School. And I play in the midfield. And I just came off a pretty bad ACL tear injury.
So I don't want to make any assumptions, right? I don't want to just tell you what I think. I need you to tell me what you guys think. So who would like to go first in answering what does mental health mean to you? What's mental health? Who wants to go first?
I can go, I guess. For me personally, mental health is just how I take care of myself. It's a lot of growing up as an athlete. It's not a lot of something we think about a lot, considering we have a lot of things with our physical health normally we have to worry about, like getting hurt or keeping your body healthy enough to play, stuff like that. And sometimes that's what we tend to prioritize first, is keeping our body healthy enough to play. Whereas, like in the back burners, no one ever talks about keeping your mind healthy enough to play. And the mental game is something that a lot of people aren't used to having to think about and aren't used to having to prioritize. And I think the one thing that the shutdown and COVID really did highlight was mental health, not just the stereotypical mental health, but what mental health can look like in your daily life. It was really hard for me not to be able to play soccer, because I found that soccer was a way I channeled my feelings, like playing or practicing was a way I channeled my frustration or my anger or my sadness when I wasn't having a good day. Soccer was something I sort of was able to turn to. So not being able to practice, not being able to play, really put a dent in my mental health. And that's when I started turning toward the gym more, because I needed that physical outlet to express my mental health, because that was the only way I had grown up learning how to express my mental health. Now, I'm realizing how little, especially in the sports world, we really talk about mental health. I think you can tell when someone is having a bad day mentally. You can tell when your teammates aren't, like, don't play the same. You can tell when they are having an off day. You can tell when things are getting to them. And we always think about that on such a short timeline. Whereas I've had friends that have come out and told me, oh, I've been struggling with depression, anxiety, whatever, for this entire season. And every time I'm surprised. And I feel like that's something that right now, especially, we're all working on, is recognizing in other people when they need help, and recognizing when they need someone to be in their corner. And they, as much as it's corny to say, like, ask out and ask them if they're okay, but that can be the difference in someone's day, and that can be the difference in someone's life, is being able to reach out and noticing someone not acting the same. So I think personally, mental health means to me looking out for not only my outer well-being, but my inner well-being, and doing the same for teammates and friends and family.
So Renee, I'll go with you with this one. Okay, so mental health. Lauren talked to us a little bit about different things that attribute to identifying and maybe reaching out to your teammates. Um, how do you, so when you recognize that you have that issue, that teammate that's struggling, do you reach out? How do you reach out? Um, and what would be a normal reaction from someone? You see me on the field. I'm your teammate. I'm having a bad day. You tell me, hey, what's going on? What would be a teammate's typical reaction? Do people usually shy away from help, or do people say, no, I actually do need help?
So over the season, I did notice one of my teammates actually really struggling with it. Like she would take things really hard on herself, and I would like me and my teammates would always have to remind her, like, "Hey, you're doing okay. Like I promise. Like you're fine. It's a mistake." But of course, as like athletes, we make mistakes and we put it on ourselves. And like some people take it harder than others. And she was one of those people. So of course, I would like reach out to her other closest friends and I'd be like, "Hey, is she okay? Is she fine?" kind of thing. And you can tell that, like, of course, she's kind of beating herself up for it. So, like, what I would do is I would actually personally go to the coach and tell her, like, hey, like, make sure she's okay. Like, reach out to her. Like, I'm going to text her later tonight, make sure she's okay. So like at least on my team, it was a very big deal kind of thing. Like we never wanted each other to feel like crap, basically. We wanted to make sure that like we were all okay, mistakes happen, they're fine kind of thing. So personally for me, my it's just like my team made it a huge priority. And even like with my like with the athletic team and everything, like they all had our backs kind of thing if somebody was having a bad day, and that helped us a lot too.
So so in your team, your coach, your athletic department, they made it not only a priority, but at least they made it important enough that it can be openly discussed throughout the season, and people could feel comfortable. The players could feel comfortable enough with each other and with the leadership. Whatever, the coach, directors, to say something if there was an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's super important, right? I can have all the resources and provide all the help in the world, but if I don't tell you that I have that, there's no reason for me to keep it to myself. So it's super important that when we do have those resources and we have those people that can help us, that we share it with everybody in our circle. And outside our, we share with everybody, like, period. Make sure that everybody has access to those resources. Diego, um, so mental health, it's a little different for guys, right? It's a little different for guys, if we're going to be honest. Especially, you're fit, you're 16 now, I believe.
Yeah.
So so it's a very different, it looks a little bit different for you. So talk to me about what mental health, mental mindfulness, all that stuff means to you, and what it means to maybe your world around, your soccer team.
To me specifically, mental health and like mental well-being is sort of like how people behave emotionally and socially, and they like both tie in together, because if somebody isn't feeling the best emotionally, they won't be as social, or they'll be less social than usual. And then if they have like really good emotions, they're like on a high of emotions, they're going to be a lot more social, and like a lot more just being themselves. Around my soccer team, we don't really talk about mental health a lot, but obviously during practices, whenever we see someone like down or something, we go to them, we talk to them, we like try to like help them, make them feel better and all of that. And then also we like mention it to our coach, like Renee was saying, it's like important for our coach to know, because if we shy away from it, we feel like we're doing like the wrong thing, and we want to like just be there for our teammates and help out.
Now, and again, with the guys that you're with and stuff like that, I mean, I coach a boys team very close to your age as well. Um, how easy is it to talk among? So take the coach out of it, take the adults out of it. How easy is it among you guys to just mention it and say, "Hey, dude, like, you all right?"
Um, I feel like it takes a while. Like certain players don't really feel comfortable yet around our team, but over like time, I've seen a lot more players like just like start to be themselves a lot more like personally, and like I've seen like people just like say, "Hey, like, are you okay?" to me or to like anyone else whenever we're having like a bad day or anything, and like it's starting to become a lot more like not less like shying or like being afraid to ask, but a lot more people are like starting to open up, and like we're like our team's starting to more gel, and we're like getting like that teammate connection, stuff like that.
Awesome. That's great to hear. I mean, we have to kind of figure out what that means to us. Like, have those people that in our team, in our family, our friends, in our lives, that we can go say, "Hey, I'm having a bad day. Let's talk. Can I have 15 minutes of your time, right? And can I have an hour of your time, and talk things through?" But Renee, let me ask you this part. And you'll go first. Is this taught in schools? Do you have resources, or do you feel that throughout middle school, high school, and college, you've had the resources, when you've had those moments of maybe not feeling all that great, or having stress in your life? Have you had the help from the schools that you've needed?
Personally, I don't believe so. I think slowly kind of thing though, like we are like like accepting mental health and we're helping people with it. Like I know in a lot of different colleges right now, like people have puppy rooms where like if you're just overwhelmed, you can literally pet puppies. So like colleges are creating sort of safe spaces for people where they can just kind of wind down and like calm down when they're overwhelmed. And, in high school, it is slowly being taught that, like, hey, it's okay if you're overwhelmed. Like, go take a walk, go do what you can kind of thing. But I feel like when I was in school, it was a bit harder to kind of like talk about your mental health and stuff. And I believe when I was a sophomore, that's when we started really talking about it and being serious about it. But I feel like it should just be taught earlier that, like, hey, it's okay if you're feeling overwhelmed and stuff. Like, that's stuff that I wish I would have been taught in middle school because I feel like when you feel overwhelmed in middle school, it's just people saying, well, it's your hormones. And it's like, well, no, maybe I'm just overwhelmed kind of thing. So I think it's something that should be more taught in school. So that way, like, when, you progress, you can help other people better as well.
Yeah, and I mean, what do you think, Lauren? Have you had the resources that you've needed when you've needed them? Do you have them now? And this is not to call anybody out or to put a blame on anything. We're just trying to figure out what we as adults are doing right, what we as adults are doing wrong. It seems like things are trending in the right direction, maybe just not fast enough. But how do you feel, Lauren? What do you think? Have you had the resources and the help that you've needed?
I definitely agree with Renee. For us in middle school and high school, mental health wasn't really something we talked about. I mean, it was something that what I sort of mentioned was sort of stereotyped, like, oh, the depressed person is the one that's by themselves in the corner, like, and stuff like that. But no one ever talked about it seriously. Like, no one ever talked about this is what depression means. This is what depression can look like. This is anxiety. This is what it means. This is what it can look like. I feel like in college, or like Renee said, also, they're definitely doing better. I think I'm trying to put this the correct way, but I think it's because in college people start to look at each other as more as humans, whereas high school is just somewhere where you sort of everyone has to get through it. You know, it's just sort of marginalized, whereas college is more as a place where you're actually becoming adults, you're becoming your own people. So I feel like that mental health is talked about more there because you're finally starting to able to look at each other and be like, oh, we're gonna start being actual humans. We need to figure out how to deal with not the problems per se, but the emotions and how to cope with them and how to live that way with them. It's not just a phase anymore where you're emotional and people are telling you it's your hormones, or people are telling you that, oh, it'll go away. Like, a lot of problems do, but some don't. And I think college is the place where people finally acknowledge that, like, these problems are something you need to address, and you're not alone in feeling like you have these problems. And I actually think, as corny as it sounds, that social media even now has got, as much as it has caused problems, it's also really helping people, because you see the mass majority of people are struggling with the same things you are, and there are people online that are actually willing to talk about their experiences, and you watch them and you're like, oh, I'm not alone in feeling that way. Other people feel like that. I'm not crazy. I'm not weird. So I think social media, especially in our generation starting now, is really helpful in making people realize that mental health isn't just something you should talk about when it's bad, but is also something you should worry about when it's good as well.
Now, Diego, stress, social, Lauren just mentioned social media, right? Um, Talk to me about stress. What does stress look like for you as a young adult, right? Because I think another really big piece to this puzzle is we have definitions for certain words, right? So if I say I'm stressed, then what stresses me must stress you too, and that's not always true, right? And what stresses you doesn't necessarily have to stress me. So I think we lose a little bit of empathy when I see you struggling with something that I don't necessarily struggle with, right? So I might just say, yeah, like, walk it off, or it'll be okay. So what are some of those stresses that you have as a young adult, right? And especially as a player coming off an injury and now trying to regain your fitness, trying to regain your spot on the team and all that good stuff. So what does stress look like for you?
For me, it's just like being overwhelmed with everything, especially coming off a ACL tear. Just being overwhelmed with the amount of things I have to do to get back to where I was. Like, for example, I got moved down from the ECNL team from Penn Fusion to the ECRL team, which is like the B team. And I'm like stressing trying to get back on the ECNL team whenever I'm cleared. And like just social media as well. Seeing just a lot of young kids just like being talked about, like playing in like high academies and like playing in for their national teams and coming off as like professionals. Like I think recently, like the 14-year-old from NYCFC just got signed to like his first pro contract, and like to me, like that just stresses me out, like seeing where I could be when I'm not, because of like how I was held back from my injury and stuff like that.
Yeah, now and that is like and see, so that's also important because it's also important to recognize what it is that stresses us out. I think because once we see that, I don't think ignoring it is the solution, right? Because next week another kid's going to get picked up, that's 14, 15, and then next year another kid's going to get picked up. So that's not going to change. There's certain things that aren't going to go away in life. So I think it's super important that we have those tools and resources for when those things do appear or they stress us out. We can cope with them and figure out a way to deal with them and use them as maybe motivation, right? Well, I didn't get picked up as a 15, 16 year old. I'm going to go work hard so I can get picked up down the road. And you know what? Honestly, I may never get picked up, but it wasn't for a lack of trying, right? So how can we use those things for motivation, or maybe figure out a way to look at different content, right, and not necessarily just look at it from face value. Um, Now, one of the things that is really important to me is, do you feel like you have the resources um, if something were to go wrong, right? Do you feel confident enough in you and where you are with yourself right now to say, yeah, if I have a bad day, I know where to go. If I'm feeling down, I can figure this out. Do you guys have that confidence? And how does that appear, like day to day? Who wants to go first?
I can go first. Um, so like my dad knows, I do suffer from depression and anxiety. So I would say I have really good resources. Of course, it was kind of hard to tell my parents that like I had that just because it's one of those things that like you don't know how it's going to affect everybody. But luckily, like my family kind of had my back. Like I'm going to therapy. I also have a good boyfriend who like kind of helps me. So I have like a really good support system. And even my friend group, like if I have a bad day, like I know I can reach out to them and tell them like I'm not doing well kind of thing. And that has helped me a lot too, because a lot of people don't have that where they can just reach out to somebody. And even still now, like a lot of people can't reach out to their parents because people still think that mental illnesses are just illnesses. Like they're not like normal. Like it's okay to be like to have depression and have anxiety. So like for me, like it helped me that like my family, my friends, like my group basically had my back and supported me through all that.
Lauren.
So I would definitely agree with Renee. It's definitely easier when you have family and stuff around you. I feel like where I differ sort of is the fact that I, for a long time, I've told myself my problems like aren't really problems enough. Like I have a household, my family is together, I have a great family, we don't have any money problems, I'm going to college, I don't have to worry about like paying it off for too much of it off because my family is helping me and I got a scholarship and I was lucky and I've always been smart and I've never struggled in school. So when I have problems in the past, a lot of times it's hard for me to direct them face on just because I've always had a problem with accepting that they're problems that are important. Because a lot of times growing up, you'll say something, this is my problem, and someone will compare it to their problem. And when you look at someone else's problem, your problem doesn't look too bad. So I think I had a hard time, and I still do have a hard time admitting I need help or have like some type of problem because I don't want to burden anyone else with worrying about them. Um, I think that, but a lot of times, if it's something enough where I say, okay, I need to tell someone, I do automatically first lean toward my parents and my family. Um, and then they're always there to reassure me that that wasn't a stupid fault or that wasn't a stupid problem. That wasn't something that I should have kept to myself. Um, After this year, I had a really hard season with my team at college. And it's because when you're in high school, you're used to being the best person at your high school, or you're at club, you're used to be the best person at your club. College is a little different because when you get there, every person on your team was the best person at their school or was the best person on their club. So it was just a change of pace that no one really talks about. It's not, you're going from pretty much your senior year of high school, from starting every game and playing every minute, to being a freshman again and having to get that time and earn that time back. And I was scared to talk about how horrible it made me feel that I wasn't playing as much as I wanted to, because I'm like, oh, well, they're just going to think I'm complaining. And I didn't want anyone to think that I was complaining. So I didn't talk about it for a really long time. But once I reached out to my mom and I did reach out to a therapist, they told me that it's not uncommon and it's not something to be ashamed of feeling. And I feel like once you do find the people that reassure you that it's not stupid or not shameful, then you're going to be in a place you're going to start to be in a place where you want to be, because those people are the ones that sort of make you reflect on yourself and realize that you're not alone in a situation.
And Diego, I'm going to keep going back to this a little bit, right? But for guys, it's different. For guys, we're supposed to be the strong ones. We're supposed to be the ones that carry the load, and um, we don't talk about this, and like we are totally fine, and we just have to suck it up, right? So how have you addressed, those stressful issues, and those stressful moments, not issues, moments, um, where you're not feeling 100%, where something's not quite right? Do you talk to somebody? Do you address it? How do you deal with that part?
Yeah, for definitely, like you said, for men, it's a little different. Before high school or anything, whenever I'd like feel bad or feel down, I wouldn't tell anyone because that's sort of like how I thought. I thought like I didn't want to make any like sort of like budge anyone about how I was feeling or what was going wrong. I thought I had to keep everything to like myself. But going into high school definitely helped me see that opening up and telling people how I felt definitely helped me a lot. And I'd tell like my parents and my teammates and even my friends if I was having a bad day or like something was going wrong, and not, and compared to before high school, that really helped a lot. Or like speaking out really helped a lot. So like it's definitely different, but now going like just speaking out about it really helps a lot more. And like my parents, all my friends, they're like really supportive about it. So talking to them is like really good. Also, when I tore my ACL, obviously I was devastated and sad, and like I would cry almost like every night or so after it happened. But after a while, we started to speaking to the psychologist from the Union Academy. His name's Brett. When I started talking to him, I definitely saw a lot of changes in my moods over like the next couple weeks and months, and like even now it still affects me. Like talking to him, like just him or like having some words written down that he said, like just still helps me get through like the day if I'm having a bad day or stuff like that. So definitely having like somebody to speak to is very important.
Yeah, and I think kind of to your point of just a lot of times also, I think as guys we have a problem identifying when we're having a bad day, right? It's just kind of like, oh, it's just a bad day, and then a bad day turns into a bad week, and a bad week turns into a bad month, and it's okay, it's just a bad month, like it's going to turn around. Unfortunately, a lot of times it doesn't turn around, right? So you know, can you I'll go to Diego with this one. can can you identify when you're having those moments pretty clear, pretty quickly? Can you identify them? Do you know what those signs are? Do you know what that looks like for you?
Before I started speaking to Brett, the Union Academy psychologist, I couldn't really identify what was causing like what was causing me having like a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, or even like a bad year. I couldn't really understand what was happening, and I couldn't like see it in like full context. After speaking to him, it definitely opened up. Like every single day, like any day I see something wrong or like I feel something bad, like I just sit down, relax, speak to someone about it, write in a journal about it, just anything to help me release it or like stress it, and then carry on with the day. And then carry on with the day. But I feel like a lot of people or a lot of men like can't really identify it, like you were saying. They just keep on going with the blows and the punches and say, "Oh, it'll get better at some point. It'll get better," when it sometimes never does.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Um, Renee, can you identify when you have an issue, when you have a problem, when you have a bad day? Can you quickly identify what that looks like for you and almost like do something about it?
So typically, I just get really overwhelmed, kind of thing. So if I feel very overwhelmed, I'll just kind of walk away from the situation, kind of thing, and just kind of like calm down a bit. Because I feel like when I get overwhelmed, that doesn't really help me. And being in that same situation and spot doesn't really help me. Typically, that happens when I'm in like very large crowds and stuff. Like it'll just be too much and I just need to get out of there, kind of thing. So that's like when I notice I'm getting overwhelmed or like, too much schoolwork. Like I just need to take like, an hour or two just to relax. Um, so that's what I typically do, kind of thing, when I'm getting
Yeah.
overwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense stepping away from the situation. Lauren, how about you? Can you identify some of those things that maybe upset you, or that it's time to figure it out, right? To figure something out because something ain't quite right.
Yeah, so I actually didn't realize this was a way of like blockading myself until I actually talked to someone that was like, oh, this isn't normal. I would just get on days that I was like bad per se, I would just get very snippy very fast. I would not really want to be around people. Like I wouldn't mind being around people, but I would be very snippy, or I'd be very like rude, not rude per se, but I'd make comments like that didn't need to be said. I'd be mean and stuff like that. And I think the first time it hit me was sort of I had for no reason just said a really like mean comment to my sister, and my mom had turned to me and was like, "Why did you just say that?" And I had just sort of been like, "I have no idea why I just said that, to be honest. I wasn't even mad at her about anything." So that was the first time I sort of realized that like that wasn't a normal thing to feel. Like feeling like that wasn't normal. And we actually had brought it up. I had a doctor's appointment just to get shots or something. So we'd brought it up to him, and he had been like, yeah, that's not how normal people handle situations, like by being bad people towards people they love and stuff like that. So I think that was the first time I realized that that's the way I get when I have bad days, because I wasn't like, I didn't get sad, like I didn't get like nervous or anything like that. I just got very mean. And that was the first time someone had told me that that's a sign of like anxiety. And so now whenever I can sort of feel that mood coming on, and I'll be like, okay, maybe today's a day where I just need to sort of distance myself from people. So that's what I do when I wake up and I sort of feel that type of mood. I'll try to just focus on myself for that day. I'll do all the things I can do that maybe I've been putting off that just involves myself, like cleaning my room or like going to the gym by myself or getting extra work done that I was putting off. So like that's sort of what I do when I feel a bad day coming on.
Yeah, and I appreciate all of your insights, and I hope that anybody who's listening to this, watching this, gets a better understanding of what some young adults do go through, and understand that this is an issue, right? And I find three very fortunate young adults here that also have had the resources and the help to kind of get through it all. But some people aren't as fortunate and don't have the necessary resources, and we need to do our part to reach out to them as well. So Renee, I'll let you go first. Any last thoughts? Any parting words?
I guess it would be if you need help, just reach out to somebody. I promise like it won't be a burden or anything. Um, it's one thing I wish I was always taught in high school, and I would always preach that to my friends kind of thing, but I was always the one never reaching out to people. So like if you have a problem, reach out. Like like you're not going to be a burden. I 100% promise.
Lauren.
Just I guess similar to what Renee was saying, it's not a sign of weakness. Not even if the first step to you is just telling someone that you think you have a problem, that is a first step enough to get the ball rolling. And just because admitting that you have a problem of yourself doesn't make you any less able to help other people around you. You can still admit that you're not as strong as you thought you were and still be able to be there for other people around you. So no one's going to think you're any less strong or you're any less able because you're willing to admit you have a problem. That just honestly shows that you're even more strong than you thought you were if you're willing to make it known to people that you think you have a problem and you need help.
Diego.
Really, like if you're just scared to tell anyone, it will get a lot better as soon as you admit you have a problem. Just speaking out and acknowledging you have a problem is always like the first step to overcoming any sort of problem that you have. It could be with school, it could be mental health, it could be soccer, just any single problem you have. Just speaking out and acknowledging that you have one is always the first step to getting better.
Yeah, I mean, and the one thing I would add is that I think it would be foolish for us to assume that every problem has a solution, or that everything is going to be okay, right? Um, but I do think that things become okay over time, and once you identify some of what it is that you're going through, it's going to make it a lot easier to get to that point where things eventually do become okay. And maybe you don't find a solution to the problem, but then you have the tool or the resource to cope with it, right? Because a lot of this is not finding an endpoint, right? It's not about finding a solution. It's about figuring out the tools and the information to cope with different things that come up through in life. So again, Diego, Lauren, Renee, I appreciate you three coming on, and I wish you, Diego, a quick recovery. Hopefully, you get back on that team, in that team, that ACNL team. Lauren, I believe you are wrapping up your playing career here shortly, but wish you the best with your PA program, because I know that's 5-6 years, so you still have some ways to go with that. And Renee, obviously being my daughter, obviously I'll see you here daily, right? I'll be able to have contact with you, but even you, obviously you just know that you have our full support, and that everybody here is supported. So you guys ever need anything, just let anybody, let me know, let someone know. And yeah, I appreciate you guys for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.